Tonight on CFTK-TV News, the Prince Rupert RCMP are seeking out a missing girl, a chance for Northwest BC residents to learn more about their local candidates is approaching, and handy-dart drivers protested outside TransLink offices in New Westminster.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cale Vaslin. Here's what's making news in the Northwest and beyond. Additional charges were sworn by police in the investigation that led to the arrest of Nathan Ridsma. On August 31st at around 7:45 a.m., Terrace RCMP got a report of a potential aggravated assault where a woman was seriously injured. The North District Emergency Response Team was deployed to help locate Ridsma, and he was arrested on September 3rd. The additional charges sworn included attempted murder, forcible confinement, aggravated assault, use of a firearm, or imitation while committing an offense, and to carry and possess a firearm for the purpose of committing an offense. The investigation began after a report of a serious assault involving two victims led to two search warrants being sought for residences in Thornhill or Usk. Those search warrants resulted in the seizure of cash, ammunition, weapons, illicit drugs, and firearms. Ridsma remains in custody at this time with his next court appearance scheduled for October 4th. This investigation is ongoing, and the Terrace RCMP ask that anyone with information about the offenses contact them at 250-638-7400. The Prince Rupert RCMP is requesting the public assistance to locate 18-year-old missing person Lexis Hill. Hill was last seen the evening of September 9th, and she hasn't been in contact with her family since. She's been described as an Indigenous female at 5'3", 100 pounds, with blonde hair and hazel eyes. Lexis was last seen in a purple shirt and black jeans. She is known to hang around 7th Avenue East and Frederick in Prince Rupert. If you locate her, please contact the Prince Rupert RCMP at 250-624-2136. The Terrace RCMP advanced their investigation into the fatal hit and run on September 8th in the area of Old Lake House Lake Drive and Clark Street in Terrace. On September 10th, officers obtained evidence leading them to identifying a vehicle owned by a local taxi company as the suspected vehicle. Officers have since located that vehicle and seized it. The local company is working with the Terrace RCMP and are fully cooperating in the investigation to determine the incident's cause. Officers did identify the driver, who's since fled Canada. The Terrace RCMP said in their general investigation section is leading the investigation and are working tirelessly to bring the matter to the BC Prosecution Service for charge assessment. With the BC election fast approaching, the time's come to learn more about our local candidates. CFTK's Jaylene Matthews has the details.
2 all-candidates forums have been scheduled so far around the Northwest. In the North Coast riding, we are saying goodbye to MLA Jennifer Rice, and we're meeting 2 new candidates, Tamara Davidson representing the NDP and Chris Sankey for the BC Conservatives. The North Coast All-Candidates Forum will take place on September 25th, 2024 at the Lester Centre in Prince Rupert. Attendees are encouraged to ask a question beforehand, and submissions can be made at the Prince Rupert Chamber's website. And in the Skeena riding, there will be an all-candidates forum presented at the Kitimat Chamber of Commerce on the same day, Wednesday, September 25th, from 7 to 8:30 at the Mount Elizabeth Theatre. At this forum, we will hear from Conservative candidate Claire Rattay and NDP candidate Sarah Zimmerman. Current MLA for Skeena Ellis Ross will not be running for provincial re-election. For CFTK News, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
It was recently revealed publicly by Prince Rupert's deputy city manager at their most recent council meeting that a major construction project is being postponed. The project in question is the creation of a roundabout for Prince Rupert's McBride Street and 2nd Avenue West intersection that is being funded by the BC provincial government. According to the deputy city manager, Richard Pucci, his most recent discussion with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure led him to discovering that they were having some issues in buying a nearby property, which is a requirement that must be met before the work can actually begin. The project, which will cost about $18 million, was supposed to begin in February of this year, but instead has been pushed back to February of next year. This past Thursday, one woman was injured near Burns Lake from a grizzly bear attack close by Shilford Forest Service Road. While accompanied by another person, she ran into a sow with 3 cubs that were feeding on some berries. The bear then attacked the woman, but she used bear spray, leading to the bear's retreat. The woman was airlifted to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Coming up next, we have a tragic story regarding the death of a young girl. Welcome back. With mediation on hold until Thursday, striking handy-dart drivers rallied outside TransLink offices in New Westminster. While their dispute is with a French company that's been contracted out to run handy-dart, the drivers believe TransLink should get involved to help broker a deal, and so do users impacted by the week-long strike. Here's CTV's Shannon Patterson.
In 2019, Jonathan Asenzio's world went dark.
I suffered a stroke at 29 years old. That was 5 years ago. And that has completely changed my life.
After waking up from a month-long coma, the Tawasin man had to relearn how to speak and walk and still needs assistance to get around.
Well, I use handy-dart for everything.
Since handy-dart drivers went on strike last week,
I being stuck, not being able to do my normal routines, which used to be going to the gym, going to my therapies, my rehab.
On Tuesday, drivers rallied outside TransLink, which contracted out handy-dart services to a French company called Transdev.
We're having no luck at the bargaining table, and we're here to pressure TransLink to step in and fix this mess with privatization and the for-profit nature of Transdev. We feel it's time they stepped in and did something to end this strike.
TransLink says it's not at the negotiating table and has no role in the labor dispute.
TransLink says they're not involved. I mean, they've hired this company. They know this company's past. If we look at British Columbia today, is the third strike in 2 years in transit under Transdev. So that's 3 strikes, and in my book, 3 strikes, you're out.
TransLink says it's reviewing how to best deliver handy-dart services when that contract with Transdev expires in 2026.
I hope they don't renew the contract with them because they clearly don't care about the drivers. They clearly don't care about us, the passengers. They're just there for the money.
Handy-dart drivers and Transdev will resume mediated talks on Thursday.
We may have thought this was going to be a short strike. I can't say it's going to be a short strike any longer.
Asenzio is worried if the strike drags on and he can't get to physio.
All my achievements that I have done with my therapy right now will go down the waste. I was very happy with my life the way it was going. And so this has impeded me to be living my life the fullest as I was.
Shannon Patterson, CTV News, Burnaby.
Now to a tragic story about a 13-year-old girl living in an Abbotsford homeless camp dying of a suspected overdose. Her grieving parents say they tried desperately to get their daughter help, but their pleas were ignored in a system they say failed at every turn. CTV's Michelle Bernoro now with a family's call for accountability and change.
You ready? 3, 2, 1.
Brianna McDonald loved her mom.
I love you.
But that love could not stop the demons of addiction and mental illness that stole her childhood and ultimately her life.
I feel like she was robbed of so much. Way too young.
Her mom says Brianna started smoking pot at just 10 and a half years old.
I got very upset with her. We had many talks about why it was dangerous and how she was way too young.
By 12, she was using a drug known as Molly. And the more the family tried to get her to stop, they say the more it seemed she wanted to use.
I think a lot of the reasons why she was doing the drugs was the mental health problems she was having. And she was trying to drown them with drugs.
Despite her age, they say Fraser Health workers provided Brianna with drug paraphernalia, including needles.
These are all her needles that she used. All the needles that are inside here are from Fraser Health, giving them to her.
Fraser Health provided naloxone kits for when she OD'd and gave Brianna pamphlets on how to use safely. But her family says what they wanted from Fraser Health was to get their daughter treatment.
They're not able to buy alcohol. They're not able to buy marijuana at the marijuana store. They're not able to buy cigarettes, but they can have access to crack pipes and kits to be able to do safe injection. It's just wrong.
In February, she overdosed at home and ended up at first at BC Children's and then was transferred to a child psych ward at Surrey Memorial.
I begged them not to let her leave. And I mean, I begged them. And so did her dad. And we tried really hard. We said that she's not mentally capable of, she was sticking pencils through her hand when she was in the psych ward there.
The family wanted her held involuntarily, but say they were told Brianna had the right to decide herself, despite her only being 12 at the time.
Parents have to be able to actually mandate that the kid stays there.
She's 12. She's my legal responsibility. So how come I don't have the right to say she needs to stay here.
Brianna was discharged, and after becoming violent at home and then later running away from a youth center, she ended up living in this now dismantled Abbotsford homeless camp. This was the inside of her tent. This is the place where she died alone.
So I thought, no, this isn't possible. And honestly, it wasn't until seeing her that I actually clicked in for me.
Left now with only the memories, the family is calling on government to support involuntary treatment.
And she had such a hard life for such a little girl.
And to do more to protect children like Brianna.
Love you. Love you.
Michelle Brunoro, CTV News, Abbotsford.
Ahead of October's provincial election, the BC NDP claimed the BC Conservatives will reduce access to abortion and support for other reproductive health services if they get elected. CTV's Martin McMahon has more on that claim and how the Conservatives responded.
Women's reproductive health has been a major focus of the NDP government, from funding birth control and abortion pills to promising one round of IVF treatment per family, which kicks in next year.
We're the first province to make birth control free for British Columbians. We've had hundreds of thousands of British Columbians take advantage of that, saving about $10,000 over a lifetime. Able to access prescription birth control now through a pharmacist if they don't have a family doctor.
And after David Eby spent time at a pre-campaign event in Victoria going through what his government has done when it comes to reproductive health, he went on the offensive with these claims about Conservative leader John Rustad.
It's fairly safe to say that if he is at best ambivalent about reproductive freedom and at worst hostile to it, that women's access to abortion, the women's access to free birth control is on the ballot this election, just like it is in the United States, just like it has been in other provinces in Canada.
Rustad responded to the attack on social media. In a post on X, he writes, "Under a BC Conservative government, access to abortion, contraception, and other items will remain exactly as it is now. There will be no changes. While abortion is largely considered a federal issue, the province still has a big part to play."
And there are all sorts of ways in which the provincial government plays a role in the provision of health services for women. So it's certainly something that can and should be addressed at the provincial level, whether we're talking about access to abortion services of various kinds or whether we're talking about access to birth control.
I requested an interview with John Rustad and was told the party has no further comment. I specifically wanted to ask about whether the Conservatives would maintain existing funding levels for abortion and other reproductive health services, but was simply directed to that social media post. Martin McMahon, CTV News, Vancouver.
Turning to tonight's weather, the North Coast should likely see increasing cloudiness at a low of 8 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area will probably be home to a few clouds at a low at 7 degrees, and the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District is forecast to get a few clouds of their own, but with a low way down at 0 degrees. On the North Coast, the week for them will be pretty much all rain and clouds, with maybe a tad bit of sun and a high moving between 15 and 14 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, their upcoming week will also contain mostly clouds, as well as rain with possibly some sun as the high bounces between 18 and 13 degrees. In the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, the next week or so will be similarly cloudy too, with potentially some more sun as well as a high shifting from 21 to 14 degrees. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is a special travel advisory: bridge maintenance, utility work, construction work, crack sealing, road sweeping, paving operations, fog patches, and the Usk Ferry is out of service due to the low river level. Highway 35 has some fog patches plus bridge maintenance. Highway 37 has some more maintenance and roadside brushing. 37A has bridge maintenance, and there is some construction work and road sweeping on the Nishka Highway. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, the new Liberal economic advisor was in Nanaimo to address his new caucus. Welcome back. Former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney was in Nanaimo to address the Liberal caucus as the party's new economic advisor. Carney called his new role an honor, but ultimately dodged questions about his political aspirations. CTV's Mike Lecoulture was on site to learn more.
Well, this was one of the most anticipated parts of this whole caucus retreat. Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of Canada and of the Bank of England, addressing caucus on the road forward and the economic path that this country should be taking. And of course, now coming into this as the chair of this new economic task force on economic success and growth. Carney whisked past reporters early this morning and then went into the room to address the National Caucus when what we understand was about a 15-minute speech followed by an exchange of ideas, which was energetic and, of course, lively. We were hearing from MPs where they were going back and forth on the ideas and how they can move it forward. Mark Carney held court with those MPs for that time before coming out and speaking to reporters, where he said, look, the challenges ahead right now is transforming the global economy and making sure that it's a transition to a low carbon economy, something that he believes Canada is well positioned to do. He also took a not so subtle shot at the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre, saying that this country needs solutions, not slogans. The question hanging over him, though, is what he wants to do politically and any type of aspirations he has at leadership. He rebuffed all of those questions and said that, look, I'm an outsider here right now and I want to help this party. When the Prime Minister calls to ask if you want to help, then you do that job, no matter what it is. He was pressed, though, by many journalists, myself included, on whether or not he feels his new role or his role as a potential member of Parliament or candidate could be more of a help to this country. Here was his answer.
This is where I can help right now in order to move our country forward. It's an exciting time. It is an exciting time for Canada if we seize it.
And it would seem that his speech was well received by a number of MPs, and they'll hope to carry that type of momentum in the next 2 days of this caucus. Mike Lecoulture, CTV News, Nanaimo, BC.
Apple not long ago unveiled its new iPhone line, but it's not the hardware that's getting all the attention, but rather what's inside them. NBC's Brian Chung explains.
Apple CEO Tim Cook offering a grand vision for the future.
The most advanced iPhone we've ever made.
Which looks a lot like the present. The new iPhone 16 nearly identical in shape and size to the 15, just with a slightly larger screen on the Pro models. But behind that familiar face is Apple's big bet.
We are thrilled to introduce the first iPhones designed from the ground up for Apple Intelligence.
Hey Siri.
Apple now promising a smarter, more personal Siri, as well as Genmojis, a way for users to create custom emojis like a cowboy frog.
It's a big step for the iPhone, which introduced Siri with the iPhone 4S 13 years ago. More recent models have largely been the same in form, so beginning with last year's iPhone 15 Pros and today's new iPhone 16, Apple is leaning into AI features to give a new boost to sales.
So if you want these AI capabilities, Apple is asking you to shell out a good amount of money to get them.
A challenge for Apple, balancing privacy concerns as it rolls the software out. Even though Apple has historically released software updates alongside the new phones, Apple execs say iPhone 16 buyers will have to wait.
The first set of features will be available in beta next month, with more features rolling out in the months to come.
The most disappointing thing about the iPhone 16 models is that these AI features do not come out of the box.
Apple hoping it can convince shoppers to buy a smartphone on the promises of it getting smarter. Brian Chung, NBC News.
And now we turn our attention to the stock markets. The Canadian dollar is up 7/100ths of a cent. The price of gold is down 70 cents. Oil is up $1.56. Natural gas is up 4 cents. Aluminum is down $14. In Toronto, the TSX is up 208.08 points. The Venture Index is up 8.01. In New York, the Dow Jones is up 124.75 and Nasdaq is up 369.65. Still ahead is a study on what happened to teenagers' brains during the pandemic. Welcome back. Now to a new study on the toll the pandemic took on teenagers. Researchers say that teens' brains aged quite a bit faster during that period of time, especially girls. Here's ABC's Rhiannon Ali.
A new study is revealing unusual changes in teenagers' brain development during the pandemic.
It's not that surprising to know that there are actual brain changes that happened during the pandemic, given everything that teens, especially teen girls, faced.
The study found COVID-era lockdowns ended up aging teenagers' brains faster than the usual rate, more than 4 years faster than usual in girls, compared to just over a year faster in boys.
The authors hypothesized that adolescent girls were affected more than boys because they may be more dependent on that social interaction and being able to connect with their friends.
Back in 2018, researchers began tracking brain changes in 160 people, ages 9 to 17. They found lockdowns contributed to an increase of anxiety, depression, and behavioral disorders, causing their brains to mature faster. The same type of accelerated brain aging has been documented in teens who've suffered severe trauma, stress, and neglect.
But it's important to note that these studies don't exactly tell us what the long-term effects are or if the process can be reversed or slowed down with the right type of emotional support moving forward.
Rhiannon Ali, ABC News, New York.
That's all our news for now. From everyone at CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin, and thanks for watching.